Major changes coming to our forecast, including the first chance for snow, frost, and freeze across some in the United States. Hi, everybody. I'm Chief Meteorologist Chris Justus. If you're new to the channel, I give you early warnings of severe weather, a reliable forecast you can count on, and a direct approach you won't find anywhere else. Here we go, a fantastic Friday heading our way with a lot to talk about. Let's get into it, if you will. It'll help me out in the comments section. Let me know where you're watching from. Takes 5 seconds, folks. I would really appreciate that. And please like this video. It just helps with the YouTube algorithms, gets this video out to more, and I get to share my passion with you. I'm a meteorologist that's been broadcasting weather on TV for 20 years. I love telling you the weather, whether it's talking about a cool down or talking about snow or dealing with severe weather. My goal is to give you the information you need to keep your family safe. And the information that I'm seeing right now is for a pronounced cool down in the East Coast. You're looking at an oscillation. It's a forecast tool that I use called the North Atlantic Oscillation. Anytime it's positive, it's a pretty muted or amplified a ridge in the East Coast. When this turns negative, it usually means an active pattern in the East Coast, and it means lower pressures, lower troughs. And in this case, it doesn't necessarily happen until at or around this dip. So when I see this dip peaking somewhere around the 9th, 10th, 11th, that means sometime around there, the pressures are lower in the East Coast. And that would indicate to me this time of the year, rain and some storms for some, but also much cooler air. And we're just not getting it right now. Big ridge across the East Coast to where high pressure's in control. Going into the weekend, we're dry from Maine to the northern parts of Florida. A big ridge building in here, and that lasts into next week. So cool mornings, warm afternoons, with a situation where we're looking at a pretty muted weather across the East Coast, but warm weather. You can see that here as we look closely at it. Big ridge digging in here across the eastern United States. We've got a lot of warm weather ahead. But what goes up goes down somewhere else. In meteorology school, we learn a lot about physics and how the atmosphere is always trying to balance itself out. So the higher the pressure is on the East Coast, the lower it's going to be on the West Coast. And while we're baking, parts of California is getting some snow, cold air, 40s, 50s for highs. I mean, just kind of rotten weather. And it looks like it tries to even out toward the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Let's go deeper into the future because I see signs of this dip happening across the East Coast. How far south it gets is up for debate, but at least some cooler air is on the way. So we go from highs in the mid-80s to the 60s and 70s for many. This would be going into next weekend, and it looks like a couple of rounds of colder air. In fact, this darker blue line you see right here, this is actually a freezing line. So snow is even possible in some parts of the continental United States. And I just love how God works, okay? I'm a believer, and I just love how God works and provides in October what we need for November and December. And establishing that snowpack is so important to the forecast. Anytime, like right now, you're dry. There's no snow, but we go from no snow to quite a bit of snow across parts of Canada. Why is that important? Now, a lot of that will melt off, but establishing that snowpack, establishing that colder air is almost like a tractor and trailer carrying, your fruits and vegetables. You want some ice in there. You want some cooler temperatures. It's gonna transport that stuff colder. So the more the snowpack digs in up toward Canada, the colder those patterns are going to be come November and December. And I just think that's one of God's great ways, many great ways of working things out for us. And here we go. You can see a piece of that. So I'm going to walk through temperatures with you this weekend and just kind of pause at some intervals. Look at Saturday's highs. We've got mid-90s showing up back here through the Mississippi. We've got mid to upper 80s in the Carolinas and Georgia. Florida's sitting hot near 90 degrees. You're thinking, I thought we were done with this. It's almost October, right? Well, no, we're going to be really hot going into the next week. And each day here, I'm just going to kind of scrub through them here. Here's Monday afternoon, 84 in Greenville, 81 in Charlotte, 83 in Atlanta. Look at Memphis, 95. New Orleans, 91. It just is really hot going throughout the next week, and I don't see any changes of that. The Midwest, you start to see that cool air move in toward Thursday, Friday. And this is the first front. But look at this, 30s showing up for the first time Friday morning. That's a coming east. And it looks like Friday night into Saturday, we're beginning to make some noticeable changes. So next Saturday morning, not this Saturday, but next Saturday, we're waking up to the 50s in the Western Carolinas. We've been there, done that, no big deal. But look at Saturday's highs. We're now in the 70s. All right, cooler air is working in, but a second surge looks to move in directly behind that Saturday night into Sunday morning. So we're talking next Sunday morning, you're waking up, you're getting out the door. It's in the 40s for the first time in Greenville, in Charlotte, in Atlanta, New York City, parts of Jersey. We've got 40s widespread, and look at this. 20s from Minnesota to Wisconsin to Michigan. It's going to be mighty cold up there. And here we go into Sunday afternoon, highs in the 60s and 70s. Okay, that's better. Nothing to write home about. But let's go into Monday morning, all right? Waking up to the 40s again. Waking up to a freeze in New England. So the first freeze is likely to happen by next Sunday night in areas of Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, New York. First frost stretches into West Virginia, snowshoe. Wouldn't be surprised if Mount Mitchell and Mount Pisgah in North Carolina are at or near 36 degrees, so frost there. And this is right on cue with when Western North Carolina would see the first frost threat. I don't think we'll have that much of a frost threat in the Carolinas, but it's at least going to be the coolest air we've had so far. And as we move forward into time, it looks like Monday's highs are in the 60s and 70s, but it doesn't last long. That's what I've been highlighting here. It looks like it just kind of retreats and stays up toward the Midwest. Midwest, I mean, we're talking about 20s and 30s sticking around much of the following week here, but in the Southeast, we're back to our old habits, right? 70s, 80s for highs. 50s for lows, comfortable, nice, but it looks like the coolest air stays up toward New England going into the middle of the month, while the rest of the country is sitting pretty warm here around 80 degrees. That means the fall colors, they're about to peak. Let me show you where we are right now compared to where we're going to be. There's some color showing up in the Western Carolinas, but look where we go into next week. So a week from now, you're at peak color up toward New England and the Northeast and getting into some really good color here across Western North Carolina. By next weekend, I expect to see pretty good color in Edneyville, if you're apple picking, Hendersonville, Mount Mitchell and Mount Pisgah. Of course, those higher elevations almost have a Canadian climate, 5,000, 6,000 feet in elevation. You bet there's going to be some high color, almost approaching peak in those areas of Pisgah and Mitchell, up through Grandfather Mountain, Beach Mountain. It's just going to be fantastic looking by the time we get to next weekend, with low color starting to come down the mountain. And that will be next weekend. Hey, an interesting phenomenon we need to talk about going on in the tropics. You're looking at double trouble here. This is Felipe and this is Rena doing a little dance, doing a little jog in the Atlantic, right? How interesting is that? They're literally dancing. And in this case, they're about to do what's called the Fujiwara effect. What is the Fujiwara effect? Well, it's named after the Japanese meteorologist, brilliant, studied this and the impact on forecasting. So when hurricanes get close to each other, they don't want to combine into one super hurricane. That's the question I get all the time in the schools. The fourth graders will ask, what happens if a big hurricane and another big hurricane become a super hurricane? While that's interesting, it doesn't normally happen like that. Hurricanes like their own environment. They want their own heat content in the ocean. They want their own winds. Anytime hurricanes get to each other, they like to mess each other up. It's the equivalent of two tops spinning on a table. If you have two quarters, you're just starting to spin there on a table. If they start bumping into each other, it's going to be weaker. It's going to be discombobulated, right? But when you get them off by themselves, they have a better chance at becoming something. And look what happens. So right now, Felipe is a weak, disorganized system. Rena is actually stronger, but the location that Felipe's at, it's got this counterclockwise flow. So the closer Rena gets, it's going to be Ricky Bobby slingshot. I don't know why Ricky Bobby always comes to mind in these type of situations, but Rena's going to be sitting here and get slingshot around Felipe. Watch it. I'll map it out and then rewind it. So boom. It's the old slingshot method that Ricky Bobby uses in his movie. And again, forgive me for using that as an example. I don't know why it comes to mind, but I had to say it. So Felipe doubles down on its pretty stationary movement and sends Rena flying. And because the wind shear around Felipe it's so strong, even though it's a weaker system, it messes Rena up completely. Rena falls away, and up comes Felipe as a strong hurricane. So again, Felipe's weak, slingshots Rena around, and boom, becomes the dominant hurricane. So Felipe is being kind of mean. I mean, honestly, look at this. A weak hurricane sends the more a weak tropical storm sends the more dominant tropical storm flying around, and then becomes basically gobbles Rena up and then moves away. All right. And then honestly, we're entering a very vulnerable time frame for hurricanes. Through the second week of October, we're usually pretty cooking. I mean, you have to think about Matthew. Some of these bigger hurricanes that we've had move toward the United States have happened in October. At least right now, I'm cautiously optimistic with what I'm seeing. I don't see anything like that happening, and we're entering this period where things are looking better here. We need to watch it closely, because the later in October we get, the more you look closer to home for threats, because that's when those cold fronts come off. They don't quite make it past Florida, so something forms there and rides up. So we have to look toward the Gulf and the Caribbean into October. But right now, so far, so good. We're not looking at anything really brewing and coming our way. Hey, folks, I sincerely appreciate you following my channel. If you don't already, please consider giving it a subscribe. Whether you're following me on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube, I'd really appreciate it if you'd follow me. And I really just appreciate you being here. I love what I do. I've been broadcasting weather on television for 20 years here. It is a passion of mine. I love sharing that with you. And what great weather we have. I'm about to head out. My wife and I are going to go to some lunch. We're going to pick the kids up from school. I've got the day off from TV, so we're going to do some family fun stuff and just enjoy the nice weather here. And what a weekend we've got. Just a blessing to have the sunshine, kind of a little taste of summer again. If you need a little bit more warmth, we've got it coming. Hope you guys have a good weekend, and we'll talk soon.